I never used to sleep as a child. I used to go to bed and then I would draw and paint all night long. And my mum was weirdly okay with that, painting till like 11 or 12 o'clock at night as a little boy. I remember this one sketchbook which was all landscapes, kind of drawing with paintbrush really. And there was this one of a waterfall, and there was a deer in the background, and there were trees, and there was just like this sense of peace in this painting, in this tiny little drawing. That was the first time I don't know, got really excited about something. Well, in my childhood there was a lack of expression. I couldn't communicate with anyone until I was about 7 or 8. And that was because I had an extreme speech disorder and verbally couldn't communicate. I had a few words. My mum weirdly could understand my language. But apart from that, I really couldn't communicate, so I was extremely frustrated. But again, art was my way of communicating. Art was my way of explaining how I felt at that moment. If I was happy, I'd paint a landscape. If I was sad, I'd paint a black picture of anger. My biggest fortune was having a family that could decode this, that saw it. And the most amazing thing is like when you put so much energy into something and you can't communicate verbally, as soon as that's finished and you pass it on, so if it's this black painting, I pass it on to you, I'm also passing on the emotion. And then after I'd give away, after being so angry and making this picture and giving it away, then I'd be fine. Because that was the emotion, that was how I felt. And then you pick up this black painting, you're like, okay, you're angry, Will. But now that was really how I think that's where I kind of, very early on in my life, put the utmost importance to art, because it's always been my mother tongue. I like to have work which is politically charged, and I like to create work which is humorous. I like to create a whole range of work which brings out emotions. Before it was just, for me, happy, sad, or very simple emotions, and now it's kind of more curious emotions, isn't it? It's like, okay, let's make a satire image which is taking is a commentary on a political situation, but let's make people laugh by putting two different things together. So then it's just a more sophisticated version of what I was doing as a little boy. I was basically there it was basically a gap year. I was eating away my savings. I would do the occasional job, but I was there just to go to museums, to look around, to have a life outside of Europe for a year. And I flew back to England for a few days to celebrate my sister's birthday. And then when I flew back, they sectioned me off, they took my phone, and I was interrogated for an hour and a half. And after them scrolling through all my emails and texts, they found a client who confirmed a tiny photography job I did for him, and basically deported me on the spot, and yeah, put me in jail for 24 hours, shackled me arms and legs, and walked me through Newark Airport onto the plane. But basically I got deported for making $200, basically, which means I just didn't pay tax on $200, so I got kicked out of America for not paying $30 tax. There was a lack of creativity after being deported from America, but it didn't last long. It was really until I found my next space. Maybe 4 months after being deported, I found a residency in Berlin called Potsdamer Straße 108, which was a nice little residency. Not the best in the world, but it enabled me to move to Berlin. And after 3 months residency, I realised that this is a place I can call home for now. This is a place which fits me, and now I'm still based in Berlin. I was barely even emerging there. I was fresh off the boat, straight out of school in America, and it was a very tough time to be an artist at that stage, especially in New York, which is very expensive. So I think the hindsight was that actually Berlin has been a superior city for me right now. I think it was the best thing to happen, but at the time obviously it was pretty devastating, but But New York taught me this hustle, it taught me this air of being, and taught me that if I wanted something, I had to go and take it. If I wanted to be in a show or do something, I had to really pull up my socks and go and show them that I deserved to be in the show, whatever. And that was a great lesson to learn. It was a tough lesson to learn how to do that and to see kind of all of these people who just throw themselves at projects. But then when I came to Berlin, and I kind of had a clearer vision of it all. Like I learned that through that year in New York. For me, this year's I've been very fortunate this year. I've been financially stable, and I've had a studio which I've been able to continue to come to and work, and I've been doing a project which is based on society and people. So I've been able to truly dedicate even more time than I normally would. And this year's been an eye-opener in a way. And weirdly, I've had a lot of opportunities. I've had a show with Koenig Gallery in London. I've got 2 or 3 shows planned for next year from that. So this 2020 hasn't affected me. It's been kind to me. I know I'm in a very fortunate position for that. But with all my work, which is all based on society and politically charged, this is a fascinating time to make art. And I think as artists, we have to respond to the time that we're in. The most important art is the art we can look at in 30 years' time and kind of get an idea of what life was like back then. And when people are looking back at 2020 and trying to remember what life was like, I'd like to show them a little bit of my vision. And I think the work I've been doing has that. So I think, and the most important work is always the work you're working on now, and I'm very excited by what I'm working on now. So I can't shed any kind of negativity to 2020. It's a weird time, don't get me wrong, and it's a devastating time too, but it's fascinating. It's a fascinating time to live. Yeah, I can have moments where I'm socially inept when I go back into society, but spending long days by myself painting and having an internal conversation, I can do that. And that's where I'm fortunate. And that's where I've got experience. Like from my early childhood of being in a world where I couldn't communicate and I didn't have that social life, to now where I have a social life, but it's very different than what it was a year ago. But the new series I'm working on started before Corona. It started October 2019, and the title of the series, the loose title of the series, is Lost Millennials, and the concept is about looking beyond and understanding as being a lost millennial that we've been told we can do anything with our lives, but there's a lot of people who are confused, who don't know what to do. They have so many opportunities and so many things, but they have no total will to do any of them. And the new series is about finding those moments in crowds. So I put lots of people together, and then it's about that moment where they're daydreaming, because I think the beauty of a daydream is you're really in yourself for that split moment. And I like to do kind of big dinner parties or crowds, and everyone's kind of having a daydream at the same time. Like at a dinner party, you're there for a few hours, one by one you'll catch your friends and your family kind of in their own head for a moment, and then they come back into the world, and I think that's a really beautiful moment. So in the new paintings I'm trying to capture that as a mass, but I think the main thing is that I'm painting crowds of people who are all a bit confused. That's 2020, isn't it? The new work is more a social commentary on our generation who have all the opportunity in the world but don't know what to do, and have all the freedom but actually have none at the same time. And there's always 2 points of perspective in these paintings. You're looking down and you're looking up, kind of like how a camera works, where you can somehow get everything in, which breaks the kind of normal drawing forms and breaks the conventional way of perspective. And I think by having multiple points of perspective and having quite a low horizon line, you start to make sense, but also it's wrong. And then you question it. And that's why these new paintings are curious by them, because there's always something wrong, but you don't really know what. And maybe that's how it feels to be a millennial.